Okay, everybody, we are back. I am not going to do a very long video because it's getting really late and I had to cook dinner. I got my washer going, so if you hear that, never mind all that. We're going to jump right back in. This was on July 22nd of 2015. Now, it says this interview took place on June 14th of 2014, interview of Kimberly Blanchard. But see, again, a simple error. It's actually 2015 that this was taken. It says on June 14, 2015, I was assigned to contact and interview Kimberly Blanchard regarding her response to Gypsy and Dee Dee's house. Her call placed to 911 requesting Greene County deputies arrive on the same date. Let's see. While Detective Sergeant Michael Green was interviewing David Blanchard, Kimberly's husband, at the scene, David agreed to contact Kimberly and to have her respond to the location to meet with me. When Kimberly arrived, she and I sat in my assigned vehicle for an interview. Kimberly stated she had received an unusual Facebook post from Claudinia in Gypsy Blanchard's Facebook page. She and David were unable to reach Claudinia or Gypsy by phone, so they traveled to their home from their Springfield residence to check on Claudinia and Gypsy's well-being. David and Kimberly had last spoken to Claudinia and Gypsy on June 5th of 2015, 5 days prior to the crime. It says that when they arrived at the location, they contacted a black female neighbor, later identified as Tamara Rose, attempting to contact Claudinia or Gypsy in the residence. Another female neighbor, later identified as Amy Pinegar, walked from her address to the location shortly after David and Kimberly arrived. All of the subjects were attempting to contact any persons within the residence. Kimberly then called 911 and requested the assistance of Greene County deputies at the location. 3 deputies arrived a short time later, 2 male deputies and a female deputy. David and Pinegar removed the screen from the kitchen window and discovered the window to be unlocked. Kimberly then began to act apprehensive about telling me what occurred next. I asked her if she was afraid of David getting into trouble for entering the residence, and she agreed. I assured her David would not be in any trouble for simply entering the residence. Kimberly then continued by describing David entering the residence through the kitchen window and unlocking the front door of the residence from within. Rose and Pinegar then entered the residence, while one of the male Greene County deputies stood at the front of the door of the residence. When David, Pinegar, and Rose were unable to find anyone within, the Greene County deputy at the front door instructed all 3 individuals to exit the residence. Rose and Pinegar exited through the front door, while David exited through the kitchen window the same way he had entered through. To pretend like nothing happened. They didn't do anything. Could he have taken anything? Who knows? Was he looking for the medication, pills? Who knows? Because that certainly was on his brain in the interview. Kimberly was also apprehensive about telling me the Greene County deputy had allowed them to enter the residence. She feared the deputy would get into trouble for allowing David to enter the residence through the kitchen window. Did he allow him to enter it, or did he just turn his back and act like he didn't know? Because there's 2 different things happening there. I think it went down that way for an intentional reason, because he probably didn't want to get in trouble, right? But the question is, how did David Blanchard go in that house and miss the fact that somebody had been laying there for over 4 days? And not only that, but if the AC really was cranked all the way down to 40 something, like, that's not a red flag? Even in June? When it's not that hot yet? The next one is on June 14, 2015. This is a neighborhood canvass report. And it says that I was assigned to conduct a neighborhood canvass of the residences in the area of Claudinia and Gypsy's house while they were missing from their residence. Although we now know that Claudinia was not missing from the residence, she was inside of it. I began my neighborhood canvass at approximately 21:15 hours on June 14, 2015. Below is a detailed list of all the contacts that I made. And I'm not going to say all this because this is dates of birth, phone numbers, addresses, even though this was 10 years ago, and a lot of this probably does not apply. This might not be the same addresses and phone numbers, email addresses, dates of birth for people. I don't want to show any of this, but I am going to read the little parts underneath. It says, David is Margaret's son. Neither David nor Margaret had seen the residence of Gypsy and Claudinia's house in over a week. David and Margaret both noted that the trash at their house had been set out, collected by the trash service, and the waste can had been placed back near the residence during the middle of the week as usual. There was another one. Sorry, I'm not sick. I'm not sick and I don't got boogers. I'm just having a runny nose issue today because our weather goes from 70 degrees to 40 in a single day. Oh, goodness gracious. I also have a deviated septum, so I have issues with sinus stuff. Let's go down here. Where was I at? Okay, Storkson is Rose's daughter who visits Rose's residence on a daily basis with her toddler children. Rose had last observed the residence on Tuesday, June 9th, on their front porch. On June 10th, Rose observed the trash pulled to the end of the driveway at 2103, their address. On the following day, Rose observed the trash can had been picked up and the trash can had been placed back near the residence. Rose also noted she commonly observed a medical van delivering medical supplies to the Blanchard residence on a regular basis. Now that's weird because Gypsy and Nick supposedly left at 5:30 in the morning on the 10th. So who was making sure the trash was being taken out? And all these people claim to have seen Dee Dee on the 10th. Now, you can say, are all those people wrong and they got the wrong day? Or did something else really happen? Just saying. Just saying. There's always that possibility. I know there's lots of theories out there. But it's really weird to me that this is the fourth time somebody swore that they saw Dee Dee or Gypsy on the 10th, driving through the neighborhood, coming back from the neighborhood, taking trash out on the 10th and placing it back, or having seen them driving back from some store or back on the 10th. So just very strange because she allegedly died at 2 a.m. on the 9th / now turned to technically the 10th of June. How can all these people see her on June 10th? It's weird. On June 10th, 2015, Storkson recalled seeing Dee Dee and Gypsy driving by Rose's residence in their maroon sport utility vehicle. Dee Dee was driving the vehicle and Gypsy was seated in the front passenger seat. Both Dee Dee and Gypsy waved at Storkson as they passed. Storkson and Rose stated Dee Dee and Gypsy would commonly drive through the dead end subdivision and wave to the neighbors. How could she do that on the 10th? She passed away by 2 a.m., right? Or around 2 to 2:30 a.m. If we're just going by what the medical examiner, Nick, Gypsy, have stated, right? Because she texted him right before 2 a.m. and he was at the door. So, just saying, how could all of these people now have been absolutely sure that they seen Dee Dee on the day of June 10th? That couldn't have been possible. It had to have been the day before or the day prior to that, and they're just mistaking the days. On the evening of June 14, 2015, Rose received an uncharacteristic Facebook message from Dee Dee and Gypsy Blanchard's Facebook page. The message claimed someone had been killed. Rose then walked to their house, knocked on the front door in an attempt to check on the well-being of Dee Dee and Gypsy. Rose could not get anyone to answer the door. A male and female then arrived in a vehicle and contacted Rose at the location. They claimed to be friends with Dee Dee and Gypsy and had also received the uncharacteristic Facebook message. They weren't receiving a message. They seen a post made by that account, which everybody got. This isn't like a private DM, but they're writing it as if it's all private DMs. Had that happened too? I don't know. But see, this is a simple thing that could be mistaken for that they were individually sent uncharacteristic messages and not a public status update or post. It says right here, they traveled to the location because of the Facebook message. They decided to check on her. So they go to the location to check on the well-being of Dee Dee and Gypsy. Rose was not familiar with the male and female. They were later identified as David and Kimberly Blanchard. Another neighbor, Amy Pinegar, also walked to the location to check on Dee Dee and Gypsy. So I'm assuming that they all didn't receive individual private messages, like this is insinuating or heavily implying, but that they all saw the uncharacteristic Facebook post made by Gypsy in attempt to pretend to be Nicholas Godejohn. Because we know one thing is for certain. It's not because she wanted her body to be found. It's because she had been Google searching her mother, her crime, and she did not realize that it went so, not only just national, it went international. That's how big this case, had gotten this media coverage. And Gypsy was obsessively, like a lot of killers or serial killers, looking at their crime, Google searching their own crime. And she had been doing that. So I believe that her trying to pretend to be Nick, that, the B is dead, and that I slashed her, and R-worded her daughter. Yeah, I think that's her trying to frame Nick. Because she was trying to set it up like, oh crap, they're onto me, they're onto us. What if I get caught? I think she was trying to set it up that she was being held hostage by Nick. And I think that was just last minute. And I think this Facebook post had to do with that. But of course, she didn't pre-plan any of this. I don't know how she tried to kill her 4.5 years earlier twice. Like, you didn't stop and think about none of this. Nope, not at all. So that was uncharacteristic for them because of this questionable Facebook message. It wasn't a message. See, this is what I'm saying. Got to be more thorough, because a simple word like that can be taken completely different, like a private DM versus a status update that's public. While all 4 persons were knocking on the doors and windows and attempting to see anyone inside through the residence windows, Kimberly called 911 and requested deputies be dispatched to the location. Rose's explanation of the event detailed that David entered the residence way prior to Greene County deputies ever arriving on scene. Shortly after David had entered the residence, 3 Greene County deputies arrived at the location, 2 male and a female. After entering the residence, David unlocked the front door, allowing Rose and Pinegar to enter the living area of the residence, while David looked for anyone within 2 bedrooms. After they entered the residence, one of the responding male deputies stood at the threshold of the residence door and told David, Pinegar, and Rose to exit the residence. David was unable to locate anyone within the residence in the front door, and then it was resecured. And the front door was then resecured. I'm sorry. On a later date, Sergeant Julian re-interviewed Rose and Storkson. Please see respective reports for each interview for details. And then goes down to another person. Martel indicated that he only been a resident of this area for a short period, and he had not observed anyone for at least 1 month since residing in the area. Martel, another neighbor, stated the owners of this particular place were this person, John and Carrie Gloyd. John and Carrie were not home at the time of my contact. It also states down here, James and Catherine reside at a certain location nearby too with their daughter, Shelby. What in the heck kind of last name? It is James and Catherine Squashing Groff. Squash, ING ROFF. Squashing Groff? Squashing Groff. Pretty sure that's how you say that. The Squashing Groff family considered themselves to be very close to Dee Dee and Gypsy Blanchard. Shelby would frequently go to the Blanchard residence to visit, but she was isolated and didn't have friends. So how are all of these people I've never even heard of before? And I've been paying attention to this case for way more than just 2 years. I've been talking about it online. Like, what? So isolated. People are over there visiting all the time. Now, see, this is contradictory because it says James and Catherine. Okay, even though their daughter would frequently go to the Blanchard residence to visit, James and Catherine had last observed Dee Dee and Gypsy on the front porch of their residence on June 9th, 2015. Now, that corroborates another neighbor seeing them on June 9th, but that does not corroborate a few other people that said that exact instance with Gypsy and Dee Dee being on the front porch happened on June 10th. Those people, I believe, are just simply mistaken for that date because we know it couldn't have been the day of the 10th. because she was already murdered by 2 a.m. on the 10th. So this, makes a little bit more sense that maybe these people just recall a little bit better or more accurately. And it says on the same date, Shelby visited Dee Dee and Gypsy, which is on June 9th. Shelby indicated that Dee Dee and Gypsy appeared fine at the time. Shelby stated she knocked on the Blanchards' door on June 10th, 12th, 13th of 2015, but received no response. Shelby noted their sport utility vehicle was present, leading her to believe the Blanchards were home each time she knocked on the door. The squashing Groffs also observed the Blanchards' trash next to the curb on June 10th of 2015. So the three people that stated they seen the trash be picked up and the trash bin be moved back on the 10th couldn't have happened, because this girl is saying that the trash clearly was still sitting next to the curb. See? People don't always recall perfectly, and people sometimes can forget things, especially when a trauma, like, finding out your neighbor had been murdered brutally in her own home, that kind of thing, can be simple misidentity or mistaken. So she had observed the trash next to the curb on June 10th of 2015, meaning that, if her and Nick were there for over 3 hours, from 2 a.m. to about 5:30 a.m. when the taxi then picked them up. So it's a little over 3 hours that they had inside of that house. We know what they did inside of that house. We know that they were having sexual relations inside of that house and attempting to clean up bodily fluid inside of that house. But they were also attempting to put the trash out by the curb in hopes it would just be picked up and be taken away. But if you've seen the crime scene photos, that is the sloppiest job of a cleanup I've ever seen, because they left so much evidence behind. James noted, another neighbor, James, this is the husband, the father of this particular family. James noted a white and gray car and a white and gray van would commonly deliver medical supplies to the Blanchard residence. James believed a relative was supposed to visit the Blanchards before Father's Day of 2015. The squashing Groffs also noted Dee Dee would let anyone inside of the residence. The Blanchards had also recently disclosed they believed a neighbor had stolen medication from them. Could that neighbor have been David Blanchard and Kimberly Blanchard? And is that the reason why David and Kimberly Blanchard will not answer any questions about if Dee Dee was selling her medication and had they been helping her? Because it's very suspicious that David Blanchard, in such a short interrogation on the video, is mentioning Dan Glidewell from when Gypsy was 19, 5 years earlier. Trying to state that, this guy had followed Gypsy around or had been talking to her and that he was allegedly trying to get close to her to get Dee Dee's medication. How would he know that? How would he get close to her to know that? And how would you know that? And why are you bringing up somebody from 5 years prior to that? Nearly 5 years prior to that. The fact that he had those Norco, the hydrocodone, the Vicodin on his brain tells me that he knows more than what he is willing to disclose, because he doesn't. And I think this is why he and his wife were nervous, because if he went in that house and he found extras that maybe she didn't sell yet or didn't take, because we know she didn't take them, she was negative for all opiates on her toxicology. Maybe he found some. Maybe that's what he was really looking for, and not really looking to see if Dee Dee and Gypsy were in there. Maybe that's what he was snooping for. Maybe this medication that had been stolen from them before, maybe it wasn't all Gypsy. Maybe David Blanchard had a problem, or maybe he was a middleman helping her to sell said medication. And I'm not saying that that's the truth, but I'm just saying that that is my suspicion after I have seen David Blanchard in his interrogation talk about the Norco so much, because that shouldn't be on your brain. And if you're going to go and be interrogated for somebody's heinous murder, you might as well just tell the cops the truth. We know people don't take their medication and they sell it to people who do have a problem with it. And we know lots of people in America know that. I know that. I've known people who have done that are in their 60s or 70s. I've known people that have had problems with opiates and opiate use disorder and have purchased them. So if I know that kind of thing, but I wouldn't relate that to my neighbor's brutal homicide unless I actually knew that they were taking it, that they were selling it, or I was involved somehow in helping them get into contact with people that would buy them or come pick them up, or maybe I was taking them and actually doing the dealing for. That's the kind of thing that's very common. So I am not blaming David or Kimberly Blanchard for doing that. But what I'm saying is that I'm highly suspicious they know more about that, because I just think it's really weird how much David Blanchard had mentioned, not the Xanax or the other controlled substances she had, the other medications, the whole entire pantry locked closet full of medications like albuterol and vitamins and all kinds of stool softeners, all kinds of things that you would need in the event that another natural disaster happens and somebody else may need medication, or your daughter, has a stockpile of them. He's talking about the habit forming ones. So that's suspicious to me. And maybe that's when Gypsy realized that those were the good ones. Those were the ones she was trying to take off with. And I think she definitely knows that something more was going on with her mother and the Norco and the Xanax. And that's what made her curious and interested in them. Maybe Dan Glidewell really did have a problem, like David Blanchard said. Maybe he was buying some. Maybe Gypsy was using them to barter with Dan Glidewell when she stole them from her mom for his attention and affection. Don't know, but I'm telling you, there's something more there with that medication, because opiate use disorder is something that's very common in the United States. And I have a lot of sympathy and compassion and empathy for anybody that has gone through that, because I've known so many that's gone through that. I've lost friends because of that. I have lost friends due to other opiates, H, stuff like that. I've had family members die. I've had, so I'm not saying anything particularly about Dan Glidewell, David Blanchard, Kimberly Blanchard, not blaming them, but I'm just saying it's highly suspicious, because if my neighbor came up brutally deceased, even though I'm very friendly with my neighbor and I talk to her all the time, known her for over a year, I don't know what medication she's on. I don't know if she's taking a controlled substance. The only way I would know that is if I was involved somehow. So I just think, from what I know, my life experience, there's something more going on with that. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Now, this report is computer forensics. This was on June 15th at 1:38. It says, I was called to assist with this case. I responded to an incident at their home address, Dee Dee and Gypsy's, on Volunteer Way. When I arrived, Detective Hancock provided me a cell phone that he had consent to search. He asked that I extract what data I could. The phone was a Samsung Galaxy S4 Active. I performed a logical extraction. Then an Android backup. The Android backup of the shared portion of the phone failed. I provided the phone back to Detective Hancock for return to its owner. I was told there was a laptop next to the bed where the victim was found. I donned a full body suit and gloves and accompanied Detective Rice and another detective into the house, where they pointed out the laptop. It was leaning up against the side of the bed on the floor. I saw the power light on the side was flashing, indicating it was in sleep mode. I instructed them to go ahead and process the outside of the laptop, which they did. I then opened the laptop up. It booted up into a Windows 8-like start menu. 8-like start menu. I had Detective Rice take photos of the screen, and they processed the interior of the laptop, hitting a few buttons on the keyboard in the process that went into the search bar. I compared the time on the laptop to the current time, and it was accurate. We took a photo documenting this. There were 2 programs showing loaded on the taskbar: Netflix, which was a login screen, and Skype, which would not load. I then attempted to collect volatile data and encountered a number of problems. I plugged in a PNY USB 2.0 flash drive that had previously loaded with software. I noticed antivirus was running the system, and I attempted to disable it. It showed the subscription was expired. It would not let me access the settings to turn off real-time protection. I attempted to dump RAM. The RAM dump completed. And then there was a tools problem and closed the OS triage. I loaded Task Manager and attempted to close McAfee. I don't know if you guys know about that controversy with the guy that created that. That was crazy. So he was just getting a whole bunch of errors, and it says that the live response portion completed with errors also. So then they closed it. The laptop showed it was connected with a wireless network home 2008. There was an AT&T wireless router in the corner of the bedroom, not far from where the laptop was found. I attempted to connect an SPD forensic computer to the router, but my computer was unable to recognize it, or vice versa. Then I used the victim's laptop from next to the bed and loaded Firefox Portable from my live response flash drive. And it goes on to say that the only two current devices were the victim's laptop from next to the bed and the DirecTV DVR. Overall, the laptop ran very sluggishly. It did not detect any encryption, so I unplugged the laptop from the power cord and ran the battery for several minutes and then pulled the battery out, performing a hard shutdown. I sealed it in an anti-static bag. It was given an item number of 13. The two other detectives then seized the power cord and placed it in a bag for me. It was underneath item number 13A. I kept them in my possession, transporting them to the Springfield Police Department for processing. And this goes on about the court. It says at 7:50 a.m., I was notified of a search warrant had been obtained for the laptop. I took photos of the laptop. This one was an HP laptop with the serial number of this serial number. Not going to read it off. It did not contain anything in the DVD drive or the SD card reader. I removed the hard drive, which was a Samsung Momentus 750 gigabyte SATA 2.5 inch hard drive with the serial number of this. I attached the forensic computer with a USB 3.0 write blocker and created a forensic image of its contents using an X-Ways forensic. The hash value of the data on the drive was a match to the hash value of the data contained in the forensic image, showing they contained the same data. And it said that I ran a quick search for the forensic image, provided some quick answers to investigators. Then for a full search of the image and RAM dump, I processed using X-Ways forensic as well. The results were as follows. The laptop had Windows 8.1 installed. It was registered to Cajun Angel 1 at Outlook.com. It showed it had been installed on April 16th. There was only one user titled D. The pictures folder contained a number of family photos showing Claudinia and Gypsy Blanchard. One drive was used and contained pictures of a couple documents. One of these documents was an RTF document containing email addresses and passwords for several different accounts of the Blanchards. There was a PDF of a medical form for Gypsy Rose in the downloads folder that was filled out by Claudinia. The laptop was located in sleep mode. When checking the history of the computer, whether it be internet, event log, or file history, there was no activity that took place after 6/9/2015 at 22 hours and 28 minutes CDT. When looking at the internet history and event logs, there is activity every single day since this computer began being used in April. Facebook was visited every single day since April. It was clearly a change of behavior for the activity to stop after June 9th of 2015. In the internet history, Facebook was the most frequently used, visited site. Due to the way Facebook stores history now, it is not clear who was always logged in or what they visited. The provider, Facebook, would have more detailed records of this. IEF was unable to recover a page that was visited showing Snow Gyp. Was able to recover a page that was visited showing Snow Gyp with the profile name Snow Gypsy Blanchard was visited, but there was no date and time associated. And since there was 3 Facebook account logins listed in the RTF document, it does not mean that Claudinia would have been able to log. It does not mean Claudinia wouldn't have been able to log in herself. Claudinia's Skype account was linked to the computer, but either it wasn't much used or history was not saved, slashed, or deleted. One of the last things done in the computer was a Yahoo search for Habitat for Humanity, Springfield, Missouri, and a search for KY3. I was going to say, if I was going to say KY jelly, I was going to be like, what? I searched the entire hard drive using index and raw data searches for the name Nicholas Godejohn and got 0 hits. There was no internet history that revealed any frequent use of social media accounts besides Facebook. There was a Google search on 6/7/2015 for check my phone records. There were no web visits that seemed overtly suspicious. And it says, I created a report in X ways and included the few documents I found. I made a portable and HTML case report used in IEF. And there's 2 pages that are completely redacted in black for the remainder of that report. This one is a contact with Jean Canasta by phone in reference to angel flights. This was taken on 9/2/2015. So that's September 2nd, 2015. But it says, during the course of the investigation, it was learned that Gypsy and Claudinia had used the Angel Flights program to take airline trips to the Boston, Massachusetts, and it says period. I think they mean to the Boston, Massachusetts area. This is what I mean with the report. Sometimes there's missing actual words or typos or autocorrect. Sometimes it's kind of hard to read because there are words missing, like to take airline trips to the Boston, Massachusetts, period. You would assume that would to take airline trips to the Boston, Massachusetts area, period. But that's missing. So like I said, humans make mistakes. We all do it. I do it. You do it. Everybody does it. So we have to account for that. It says Jean advised Gypsy and Claudinia had been attending medical conferences while in the Boston, Massachusetts area, period. Had advised that Gypsy and Claudinia have stayed at her residence in the past, but she believed that the last time she had contact with either of them was approximately 5 years prior to the incident. John advised she did not have any pertinent information for the homicide investigation and advised she only wished to provide the information in reference to the possible fraud taking place with Gypsy and her Gypsy's reported medical conditions. Jean was thanked for her time and the phone call ended. There was no audio recorded interview as there was a malfunction with the recording equipment. She only wished to provide the information in reference to the possible fraud taking place with Gypsy and Gypsy's reported medical conditions. Recovery of USB drives. This is on July 20th of 2015. On July 20th of 2015, 3 cell phones were taken to Springfield Police Department to be analyzed by the computer forensics technician, M. Costello. While speaking with Costello, it was learned that he had located 2 USB flash drives inside a black in color laptop bag, which also contained an HP Pavilion laptop. Costello turned custody of the items over to the Greene County Sheriff's Office. Inside one of the packages containing the LG touchscreen cell phone USB thumb drives were also located. The evidence packaging was open and the USB drives were removed. All 4 of the USB drives were placed into an evidence bag and logged into the property room at Greene County headquarters. Didn't Gypsy have also a tablet? She tried to say that her mom, that the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society had gotten her a laptop like 5 years previous to the crime for Christmas, but then explained why her mom had a laptop, she had a laptop, they both had a cell phone. Now, she tried to lie to investigators about her own cell phone because she knows that's what she was texting Nick on. But in one of her documentaries, she actually states that, and in the prison confessions of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, that when she ran away the first time, she accidentally dropped her cell phone out of her bag, and that's how her mother found her. But then she says in like Gypsy's Revenge that it was like Dan's friends that had mutual friends with Dee Dee, and that when she showed up to Dan's house, that they're the ones that called Dee Dee and was like, hey, come get your daughter. But then in the prison confession, she also says that she uses her mother's cell phone when her mother is sleeping to text Dan Glidewell, right? So that's really weird. But when she's caught, she's trying to lie to the investigators when he's asking her if she's got a phone and what's her phone number. She says she only has her mother's phone. And then she gives her mother's phone number. When she's caught with having a cell phone, she then has to admit that she has a cell phone. But I think she was trying to get away with not admitting she had a cell phone because she knows that's what she was texting Nick with. But I think she also had a camera somewhere. I saw it on one of the supplemental reports that there was a camera, and then never seen anything regarding the photos on that camera. Now, we also know that there's over 14,000 Facebook messages between her and Nicholas, but what I have never seen is all of the messages for the Christian dating for free.com website, because that is how they initially met in October of 2012. Or if that's quickly subsided and there were no more messages on that website, because they then went over to either email, text, Facebook. And we know she had multiple different Facebook accounts, including Emma Rose. So there's just that. Then there's a search warrant for the cell phones. And this is on August 13th. And this is on July 20th. A search warrant was applied for and granted for 3 cell phones. All of the phones listed were seized from the residence. Now, this isn't the cell phone Gypsy has on her in Missouri or in Wisconsin with Nicholas, right? Because there was also things that were seized from Nicholas, a PC. There was also a PC in her and Claudinia's residence. And then there's the laptops. There's tablets. I think Nicholas had a gaming console, had a PC or laptop, tablet. There was multiple different electronic devices besides camera, USB drives, cell phones, tablets, laptops, personal computers, gaming consoles. There was quite a few listed. So that's just interesting. But it says that they had gotten 3 cell phones out of the phones listed that were seized from the residence under the authority of a search warrant in Waukesha County, Wisconsin. Okay, so this is taking place at Nick's mom and stepfather's house, okay? So this is stuff she must have had on her then. It says the LG touchscreen cell phone was seized from a piece of luggage, which Gypsy identified as belonging to her. The LG flip phone was located on a dresser inside the residence of Wisconsin, specifically Nicholas's bedroom. The Kyocera flip phone was located inside the residence of Wisconsin, laying on the kitchen table in close proximity to Nicholas's wallet. So that's Gypsy had 2 cell phones. I wouldn't doubt if at one point or another she had another one too. She could have had a government issued phone as well for free, plus one she bought or had, who knows. Once the warrant was granted by the Honorable Judge Michael Cordonnier, or Cordonnier, however, I was sure that would be Cordonnier originally. Custody of the cell phones were turned over to Michael Costello, forensic investigator with the Springfield Police Department. Investigator Costello processed the cell phones and then provided the forensic analysis, which was on the DVD. The DVD information was logged into the property room at the Greene County Sheriff's Office as evidence, and a copy of the information was provided to Sergeant S. Hancock. At the time of this report, all of the cell phones were still in custody of Costello. Why would Gypsy need 2 cell phones? Because she was trying to hide her digital footprint. That's why. By omitting not just one, but both of them. That's why. And this right here says grid search. On June 15th of 2015, a grid search was conducted during a homicide investigation. The grid search took place in a brushy area located on the north side of the residence. The area searched was approximately 5 feet in depth and traveled east and west of the residence, approximately 50 feet. Nothing of evidentiary value was located during this search. And then tomorrow, we will pick back up with the interview with Elizabeth Prather. Prather. Interview with Elizabeth Prather. That's where we're going to leave it for tonight. Just want to tell everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for being with me. If you don't mind, like, share, subscribe. Definitely leave your comments because I try to read all of them and get to them as soon as I can. And I always try to reply. I love you all and have a fantastic night.